Alhamdulillah wa salatu wa salam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Amma ba'da. Habita fillah. The last point that we mentioned, which was the ninth point, I think it's worth beginning and just reviewing very quickly a portion of what the Sheikh said, because as we speak and as we are speaking, there are many groups and others who are preparing to do work and works, academic works, in order to belittle the usul of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, the base precepts of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, those general concepts that the people of the Sunnah uphold and hold to, and that we find that were in agreement and were expounded upon by the Salaf as-Salih up until the scholars in more recent time, that there is a madhab and minhaj of Ahl Sunnah, and there is also manahij, various ways and paths of the many people of innovation and desires, that you have so many sects, and we have individuals that we know in the West that are busy. They are popular individuals, and they are busy spreading bid'ah, and they are busy belittling, tearing away at the foundations of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah by writing and trying to expose and cause doubt about great imams of the Sunnah throughout history. For example, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, or Shaykh al-Islam ibn al-Qayyum, or Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad ibn al-Wahhab, and others, that there's so much controversy, and especially now, and there will be more in the future, that because they feel that if they can undermine these individuals, that they feel that they can undermine the da'wah of Ahl Sunnah. And there's no doubt that those imams contributed immensely to the codification of the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah in contemporary times. But prior to those imams were the Salaf, and all of the history of Islam, and where Ahl Sunnah kana mawjood, kanat mawjood. Ahl Sunnah has always been around, walhamdulillah. The Salaf as-Salih, the meaning the pious predecessors, the Ahl Athar, Ahl Hadith, Ahl Sunnah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, Firqat Najiyah, Taifat Mansura, all of these names, Ahl Sunnah has been present. They're not going anywhere. Even وَلَوْ كَرِيَ الْكَافِرُونَ وَلَوْ كَرِيَ الْأَهْلَ بِدْعَةِ, even if Ahl Bid'ah hates it, even if the kuffar hate it, Ahl Sunnah is not going anywhere. So Ahl Sunnah will thrive without you and I. We're nothing. We hope to be from Ahl Sunnah. But what we do know is, we know there's a minhaj of Ahl Sunnah. We know that there are principles of the Salaf as-Salih. No matter how many how many people who have doctor after their name and try to spend time and effort writing to belittle and destroy the usul of Ahl Sunnah. No matter how many youth follow them, that's their choice. They can follow the du'at ila abwab jahannam, because no doubt when people come up with these newly invented matters, they become the du'at ala abwab jahannam. They become the du'a and the callers to the hellfire. And many people are going to follow them, just like the Dajjal. So we have people who are du'at who are like mini Dajjal, because they call and try to belittle the minhaj of the Salaf. Anybody who spends their time talking about, I am post-athari, saying I've evolved beyond the ath. What have you evolved behind? Evolved beyond Islam? What are you talking about? Because Islam is the athar. Kama qala Imam Barbahari, what did he say? He said, Islam huwa sunnah. Wa sunnah hiya al-Islam. And that you can't have one without the other. That Islam is the Sunnah and the Sunnah is Islam. What are you going to be post-Sunni in the future? Are you going to be post, I don't know what post you're going to be. You're going to be post-Muslim in the future? Because that is the path. That is the path. what we see, in fact, when we see and hear the things of some of these mubtadi'ah and what they're saying, it is new, but it isn't new. Because you can imagine that during the time of the Salaf, when the Jahmiyyah appeared, and then when the Mu'tazila and the Karamita and the Kulabiyya and the Asha'ira and all of these groups and sects that appeared, that must have been so strange. When Umar, radiallahu ta'ala, when he heard about the Qadariyya, when he said, as soon as he heard this false Aqidah, he said, tell them that, I think it was Ibn Umar, he said, tell them that I am free from them and they are free from me. That was a mawqif of Ahl Sunnah, because he knew that he was on what the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam was upon. He was a Sahaba. He knew the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he knew that what they had was bid'ah and ilhad and zandaqa, and it was something to undermine the creed of Ahl Sunnah and what was already perfect and pristine. So he was like, tell them I'm free from them and they're free from me. So Ahabati Billah, this is very, very, very important that you continue learning. And you learn only from the people of the Sunnah. And you spread that you learn only from the people of the Sunnah. Limada? Why? Because if you are easy in these matters, and we accept Dr. Fulan, Dr. So-and-so, and Dr. So-and-so, and Sheikh so-and-so in quotes, and Talib al-Ilm so-and-so in quotes, and Da'i so-and-so in quotes, that then the people will easily accept their falsehood and their batil. So it's no doubt that my advice, before we get into the Sheikh's advice, is that you really do need to draw the lines in the sand. And it really doesn't matter. I've had many people who've talked to me and said, hey, why don't you tone it down a little bit, and, you can kind of work with us. You can work with us. We have money. We have this. We have a position. We have school, this. And I just don't see that beneficial for my deen with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it goes against the tarbiyah that I had. My tarbiyah, as far as the love for the Sunnah, began with Imam Muqbil. How are you going to go from that to, it's very difficult. That's just what is in my guts. It's in my blood. So it's hard for me. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. Although I know it's a stern, strong position and smashing the heads of Ahl Bid'ah and any appearances of Bid'ah, but that's just how we were raised in the deen. As far as when we began to study our Islam, this is our sheikhs and our imams. So I don't know anything else. I can't. I'm restricted because I feel that that's a truth. I don't go against what those imams codified in their books, because what I see from Imam Muqbil and all of these great imams of the Sunnah in this time is I see their silsila. I see their chain to the Salaf, that they are the callers to the Salaf, not just in claim, but in practice and in their mawaqif, in their positions, how they deal with Ahl Bid'ah, how they expose Ahl Bid'ah, because they knew that was a threat to the religion. They knew that was a threat to the religion, that when they're soft, everyone after them is going to be even softer, because it has a ripple effect. It has a ripple effect, and it becomes more mumayyah. I don't usually like to use that term, but it's true. It will water things down even more and more. So after me, the next guy will be more watered down, and after him, more watered down, until there's nothing left of the usul Ahl Sunnah being taught with the people in that chain. And so that's why it's important to stick to those principles. It really is. May Allah forgive us of our many shortcomings and bless us with ilm and nafiyah. May Allah bless us with more knowledge about the usul of Ahl Sunnah, so we can practice it and understand it and see its applicability al-an ila yawm ad-din, from now until the day of judgment. Because that's Islam. Hada Islam haq. It's not this other stuff we see from a lot of these du'at ala abwab jahannam, all these callers to the babs of the hellfire. May Allah protect us. So I thought it was very relevant because something came up today. Someone mentioned something about one of the doctors who's working against doing a refutation of Muhammad ibn Wahhab and all bid'ah after bid'ah after bid'ah until who knows. I honestly, I can see that this man could possibly, and that's from Allah. We don't know anyone's future. We don't know. But this is what the Salaf used to observe. They would see some people, they would begin on bid'ah, and they would go from minhaj to minhaj until they left Islam. And this can easily happen. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen so many people who are like ping pong balls. One day they were Salafi, then they allowed the weakness. They became Ikhwani, Takfiri. Then from there, after the Takfiris broke them and disappointed them, and that minhaj disappointed them, some of them are now the biggest callers against Islam, period. Let me give you a name, just in case I think I'm making up something. Look up the name Morton Storm. I know him very well. We were in Yemen together. We were in Damaj together. I know him. He mentions my name in his book. It's a CNN book. By collaborators with CNN, they wrote the book. My Life in Al-Qaeda, Morton Storm. Look it up. That is a perfect example of what we're reading, even from the Salaf, when we saw that people ping pong to ping pong, from minhaj to minhaj. He started out with Salafi. Sheikh Muqbil liked that man. Sheikh Muqbil used to ask about him. Where is he? Where's that guy at? We don't see him. The Sheikh knew him by name. But look at how when you leave Ahl Sunnah and you're weak, and maybe you had bad treatment from people Ahl Sunnah. A lot of times that happens too. That causes people to run away. That's why we have to show the example of the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in totality, not just a claim in the name Salafi, but yet you're only busy talking about other Salafis and you're belittling the scholars, and people want to learn about Islam and you're just telling them who to hate, who to dislike. This is what al-wala wal-bara. On this individual, you better be down with us. All that hizbiyah, then the people, of course, they don't want to deal with Salafis and the da'wah to Ahl Sunnah. So that's why it's very important to present Islam Kamil in its complete form, based on the book and the Sunnah and the understanding of the Salaf of this Ummah. So the Sheikh, I just wanted to revisit a couple of tiny points of his 9th point, and then we'll go right to the 10th point, which I think is almost the last one anyway. We may finish it very shortly. He said, the people of innovation, because this reminded me, the people of innovation who have opposed Ahl Sunnah and their minhaj when it comes to textual deduction, so it's how they look at the text, education, tarbiyah, teaching and calling to Allah, how they teach the people, follow their desires and do not establish their knowledge and principles by following the ulama of Ahl Sunnah. Why this directly came to mind when I was reading this, I was just thinking about this conversation I had today with another Talib al-Ilm, may Allah bless him, and he sent me a new clip of Dr. So-and-so, and Dr. So-and-so, I couldn't even stomach listening to it, and that's just my own weakness. I just too busy with other things, and I don't need it. It stresses me almost. So I asked him to give me the synthesis, and he told me the good of it, and then he told me the evil, which was a great evil, and a great evil of bid'ah that he will go on to spread as he has been spreading. So it makes me think, because a person like this, they're sharpening their tools in order to undermine Ahl Sunnah. Their goal now is not to be quiet, but now it's to make enough noise to try to get people to not follow that minhaj, to say, no, it's okay. You can just pick an aqidah. They're all good. It doesn't matter. It's all the same. You can be this. You can be Ashari. You can be Maturidiyya. You can be Mu'tazila. You can be Salafi, but I don't recommend it. You could be the A'udhu billah min misguidance wa zandaqa wa ilhad wa kufr wa shirk wa bid'ah and all of its manifestations. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. So this is the danger, ahabati fillah. This is my nature too. For those who listen, I am an emotional person. When I get emotional, when I get my coffee in me, so you have to excuse me sometimes. Let's go to the 10th point, which is getting almost to it's the last part of the treatise. He says the 10th point. So the Sheikh here, he's going to end his treatise. He says, I will end this piece of advice with some precious benefits which I see, that by acting upon them will result in a tremendous reward, merit, and will raise one in the ranks of virtue with Allah, because that's what it's all about. It's about worshiping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I call my brothers to carefully consider them and to act upon them, meaning to act upon these principles he's about to give you, these pieces of advice, especially in these times of which fitna and hawa, meaning desires, have become widespread and ignorance has become dominant and prevalent, except with those whom Allah has mercy upon. Illa man rahim Allah. So he says, firstly, so let's listen to what the Sheikh says, because this could be very beneficial for us and for just from today even. He says, firstly, my brothers on the Sunnah, no, if you are truly from the people on the Sunnah, then you will never be harmed by the plots of the people. Allahu Akbar. That's a lot of times we get weak as individuals, but really we should rest firmly on this minhaj. That doesn't mean firmly on ourselves, because we know we have sins, we know we have shortcomings, we know we have slips of the tongue, we know this, but this minhaj, this methodology of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, you should rest assured that it is the minhaj al-haq. And if you are truly from the people of the Sunnah, then you will never be harmed by the plots of the people. None of their accusations of you being a mubtadi'ah can remove you from the Sunnah. Hada muhim jiddan. Look at that beautiful, I'm telling you. When you talk about the precepts of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, when you're talking about the usul of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, if you know and understand those usul, and that's why I encourage you, and I think we're going to get into I'm going to start teaching something just about usul of Ahlul Sunnah. Some of the principles, without going into the books. These are the foundation principles before you go into the books, really. And mostly we don't study those. You only get those from scholarly works, from some of the scholars who've written about them. They give you like an introduction to studying how to study Aqidah, how to study the Minhaj of the Salaf, or what are the base principles of the Minhaj of the Salaf, which then when you go to books like Aqidah al-Wasitiyah, it gives you the in-depth thing. And this is one of the things I'm halfway through, or more than halfway, walillahil hamd. These past few days I've been recording for Al-Athari Institute, a very beneficial book. I'm so glad I'm learning more about, it's really so important because it's giving you the precepts. It's like an introduction to Aqidah. It's an introduction to how to study Aqidah and how to know the Aqidah of Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So the Sheikh says, so if you are truly from the people of the Sunnah, you will never be harmed by the plots of the people. How do we know this? Is this a Sheikh's opinion? Is it something really nice he just mentioned? No, he's going to mention the hadith in which the Prophet ﷺ said, "Ma tazal ta'ifatun, la tazal ta'ifatun min ummati zahirin al-haq hatta ya'tihum amr Allah hum ala dhalik." Wa fi riwaya, "La yazal ta'ifatun min ummati zahirin al-haq hatta ya'tihum amr la yadurruhum man khalafahum wa la man khadalahum hatta takum as-sa'a." The Prophet ﷺ said, "There won't cease to be a group from my nations." In Sahih Bukhari, Sahih Muslim, I believe. He said, there won't cease to be a group from my nation that is on the truth. No one will harm them who differs with them until the hour is established. I believe Imam Bukhari said, and his sheikh said, if هذا ليس أهل حديث فمن هم. If this is not a description of the people of hadith, then who is it? So many of the muhaddithin, they understood this to mean that this hadith is talking about Ahlul Sunnah, and they referred to themselves in that time period as Ahlul Hadith. The people of the Sunnah. Who are the people of hadith? They're the people who collect hadith, people who memorize hadith, the people who recite hadith, the people who believe in hadith, the people who spread hadith. And it's authentic, and look at the science of showing whether it's authentic or not. That's Ahlul Hadith. And that's Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah. Because Ahlul Sunnati wal Jama'ah, from their usul, is they love Ahlul Hadith, or they are from Ahlul Hadith, in that they follow the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, which comes from Ahadith of Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So no one will harm them. So he says, and if you are deviant and astray, and I ask Allah to give you refuge from being such, then none of the praises of the people will benefit you with Allah. Ooh, that's high-powered when you think about it. Think about how many people are so popular. Thousands of followers. Everyone wants to do a podcast with them. Everyone's doing a new interview. Everybody's inviting them to come christen their masjid or whatever, bless their masjid or open up their masjid, open up their dawah center. That doesn't matter. If what they are doing is not pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it doesn't benefit them at all. So this is the picture that we have in this world. We can't be deceived, that we need to make sure that we're on the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that we're adhering to the book and the Sunnah. May Allah bless us with that. Ameen. Regardless of whether they consider you to be from the people of Sunnah, or they extol you or attribute imitative and falsified nicknames to you, for indeed Allah knows your true reality just as well as you know it yourself. So I warn you against deceiving yourself, and sufficient enough for you as an admonishment is the advice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam he gave to Ibn Abbas, and the hadith of the three who will be the first to be burnt in the fire on the day of judgment. May Allah give both me and you refuge from this. So it's very important to have your intention sahih, that your deeds are in accordance with the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that you learn from the A'immat Ahl Sunnah, the Imams of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So now he mentions the second piece of advice. Know that the ulama of Ahl Sunnah, those who are firmly grounded in knowledge, did not reach the level of eminence and leadership in the religion except by the tawfiq, the success of Allah, and by being patient while having true yaqeen about Allah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we made from amongst them leaders giving guidance under our command, when they were patient and used to believe in our ayat with certainty. So it's very important not to allow doubtfulness to come to you, the satanic whisperings and the devils from amongst mankind and jinn to try to detract you and deter you from being on the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam. Shaykh al-Islam Ibn Taymiyyah said in this regard, he said, be subtle, beautiful statement. He says, with patience and certainty, you will achieve leadership in the religion. So we shouldn't desire to be leaders and to be the, rulers or leaders of our communities or this and that. That should not be our inner desire and our goal. I want to be an imam. I want to be the sheikh. I want to be this. Doesn't mean you don't aspire to be a scholar or to have scholarly traits, but it should not be that you desire to want people to look to you and, praise you and all this kind of things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raises whom he pleases. يُعِزَّ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَذِلُّ مَنْ يَشَاءُ. He honors whom he pleases, and he lowers in status whom he subhanahu wa ta'ala pleases. So he says, in actuality, yaqeen is strength and vigor in one's knowledge, which is founded upon sound evidence and understanding of the text from the Quran and the Sunnah. This, of course, is the exact opposite of what some of the students of knowledge today are pleased with for themselves. The reality of the matter is that the only share they have of knowledge is to blindly follow a particular scholar or a student of knowledge and then claim that the truth is with him absolutely, and no one understands the Sunnah except him. How many people that in general, their usul is that of Ahl Sunnah, that they are in general following the Salafi manhaj, but yet they fall into Hizbiyah and they say the truth is with only Sheikh so-and-so. If Sheikh so-and-so said it, that's enough. As if it was revelation or something, without looking at evidence, without anything. They just blind follow and make ta'zeem to certain scholars. This is a very dangerous trait, a trait of Hizbiyah. All of our scholars warn against it, even the ones who people make this ta'zeem for. Some people, they put up certain ulama and they make their speech as if it is almost revelation. And we're not exaggerating. Some people do this. And this is an insane mistake, and it is horrible, just like the Sufis do, and it is so dangerous. But that does not belittle the status of those ulama. And that's what's very important, because a lot of people, as I see someone keeps commenting, medkhalis. But this is, that's a very wrong understanding. And if you look at the works, if you know Arabic, and you read, and if you sat with the sheikh and you listen to him, then you'll know he doesn't call to that. That doesn't mean he's not free from mistakes or what have you, but he is not one who is calling people to blind follow him. But unfortunately, many of the students that fell into that, they're the ones who make up new usul, new principles, which is bid'ah. They make up new principles of hizbiyah and bid'ah to say, yes, you have to follow the sheikh said it, so-and-so must be off it. Oh, we just needed the sheikh said, khalas, destroy that whole community of dawah. No, these things take thick, and everyone can yusibu yukhti. Anyone can make a mistake or be correct. So we have to look at the soundness of the sheikh's hukum, why he said it. Did he say it because someone gave him a picture which was incorrect? Did he say it for this reason, that reason? You know, those things require knowledge and behuth and looking into issues and researching, not just blind following. Likewise, blind following in the other way and to speak ill of the sheikh, because I'm sorry to say this, but all the people that I know who use that term medically, and I would say I don't know anyone without exception that I know of, especially if they do dawah, that I don't consider a hizbi, that I don't consider, like, they're not Salafi, they're not on the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. Because how would you spend time just because of your own, you might not like what the sheikh said, or whatever the case may be, or his hukum, and then you're going to make him out to have a new sect and so forth. Or just because you see, unfortunately, those people who do have blind following, passion, and ta'asub to him, don't attribute that to the sheikh or any of our sheikhs of Ahl Sunnah who are known for propagating the Sunnah and battling bid'ah and Ahl bid'ah. So be careful. The third principle he mentions, so then he mentioned about yaqeen, and then he said sabr. He says sabr is fortitude and endurance in seeking knowledge, in addition to acting upon the knowledge and occupying himself with it day and night. This is contrary to those who have a weak determination and they find themselves content with leisure and repose, by which one gives into his own desires to the extent that he has no interest in seeking knowledge altogether or to exemplify it in his behavior. So it's very important to practice what you know and strive and be patient in seeking knowledge and continue to seek knowledge. Don't give up. And this is going to help you battle some of these illnesses that we see of bid'ah and of bid'ah from Ahl bid'ah. He says thirdly, so the sheikh says thirdly, know that takfir, tabdi' and tafsiq is the sole right of Allah. So avoid categorizing a Muslim to be a disbeliever or an innovator or a rebellious, disobedient sinner, especially if he does not deserve to be categorized as such, even if he considers you to be a kafir. For indeed, Ahl Sunnah do not combat oppression with oppression. Allahu Akbar. That is some powerful speech, if only we knew. If only we practiced. Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala said, the Khawarij pronounce takfir on those who stick closely to the Jama'ah, as do the Mu'tazila. They deem anyone who opposes them to be disbelievers, as do the Rafida. And if they don't pronounce takfir on him, then they deem him to be a fasiq. However, Ahl Sunnah follow the truth from their Lord, which has come to them by way of the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and they don't make takfir on the one who opposes them. Rather, they are the most knowledgeable of the people concerning the truth and the most merciful of the people to creation. And that right there, Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah just laid down a foundation, a powerful qaida, a powerful principle or principles about some of the usul of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah, that they do not make takfir and tabdi' of people just because they do it to them. And they don't do a harm and become oppressive just because people do harm and oppress them. So that is so important. And he mentions along with that those are sifat of Ahl Sunnah. Those are traits of Ahl Sunnah, is that they don't refute falsehood with falsehood. Instead, they bring the truth to combat falsehood. And they don't attack someone just because that person is attacking them. So this is where we found some individuals and some groups that fell astray because they began to think that they were the ones who were the only ones from Ahl Sunnah, and that they had the entitlement of Ahl Sunnah, and that anyone who differed with their statement, even if it was knowledge based, that they could not be possibly from Ahl Sunnah. So they came up with principles that were a falsehood, based on batil, based on pure, unadulterated hizbiyah, which is so dangerous. It's so dangerous just to get in the thing of calling to ourselves, calling to our crew and stuff like this. We want to call to the haqq. As the Sheikh said, Da'wat Ahl Sunnah, da'watum min kitabillah ila kitabillah, wa min sunnati Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ila sunnati Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. So don't follow the sects from before and refute bid'ah with bid'ah or falsehood with falsehood. He said, fourthly, avoid boycotting the brother who boycotts you, especially if this hajr of you is not admissible. Instead, hasten to give him the greeting. Be gentle and lenient with him, and remove from him the misconception by which he is boycotting you. It's beautiful. Look at how the Sheikh is talking about dealing with these things. I don't know what happened to fifthly, but anyhow, the next principle he said, or the next piece of advice, he said, the people who find fault with you and criticize you either by belittling you for who you are or by attributing some false accusations to you by using statements that oppose the minhaj, the methodology of Ahl Sunnah, like saying he is astray, or he is a deviant, or he is ignorant, or he doesn't have any understanding. Don't seek retribution for yourself, or you will fall into self-praise, and this is clearly a destructive path. That's such a good reminder. That's why I like studying and going back over this treatise, because it's a reminder, because we all get overtaken by hawa. Sometimes you hear a person of bid'ah and a person who's clearly wrong, and they criticize you unjustly. So you don't want to jump right in and jump right into the fire with them, but instead you need to exemplify and show a higher plateau if you can, to strive to be patient, and if it needs to be refuted, if you see that they're consistent in their batil, you have the right to refute them. But just be careful about getting caught up in defending yourself or praising yourself. This is a very dangerous thing, and it's an excellent reminder, and the reminder benefits the believer. The Shaykh then says, which is beautiful, he says, Ahl Bid'ah, the people of innovation, used to describe Ahl Sunnah with some of the most vile and hideous descriptions, but Ahl Sunnah would never pay them any attention. Instead, they would restrict their refutations of them to the errors made in the religion and advise the Ummah accordingly. And indeed, we have them in a beautiful example to follow. What a beautiful example from our Salaf Salih. If only we go back to those books of the Salaf and really understand them, teach them, learn them. This gives us the qawaid and how we deal with our religion. So we know how to deal with bid'ah. So we know how to deal with ahl bid'ah. So we know how to not fall into the traps of the shaitan, of whether it be bid'ah or whether it be being unjust. We don't want to be oppressive to people. Even to ahl bid'ah, we have to be just. I can't start speaking about so-and-so unjustly, without any cause, without any reason, even if he's a mubtadi'ah, even if he's spreading bid'ah. But it's very important not to be unjust with him. I can't lie about him. I can't distort his speech. I have to bring it how he used it, so that way we understand it, and it's for the sake of Allah, to protect ourselves and protect the community of Muslims. He says, however, if they then he says, this is not considered self-praise, rather it is vice to the ummah. You know, when you are refuting false statements and so forth. So we missed the thing. He said, however, if they accuse you falsely of something, so if someone is attacking you with lies, and that's what happened. As you see, I don't have many of those kind of refutations that are extensive about individuals, especially when it had to do with myself, unless they began to lie about me. Like there was one guy, and I referred to him as Hamza al-Majhul. So I took the time, I went through his false accusations of me, and I went and researched and gave it back to him. And so those kind of things, that is permissible, as long as I'm not praising, as long as you're not praising yourself, and as long as you are defending the haqq, and you're defending yourself from his characterization of you in a negative and evil way. He says, the ulama have never ceased refuting and negating false statements that are attributed to them unjustly. So this is permissible. If someone is lying about you, you have a right to refute them personally about this, the injustice, the lies that they are propagating and spreading, and not by coming up with lies about them, not by being oppressive about them, but dealing with the issues and dealing with their falsehood. This is not considered self-praise, rather it is advice to the ummah. So there is a difference between this matter and the one mentioned previously. Therefore, hold tightly to the guidance of the ulama in this regard, and do not follow in the footsteps of the ignorant ones who, if someone criticizes him, then he fills the dunya with praise and extolment of himself, and we seek refuge with Allah from being abandoned by him. This is so powerful what the Sheikh is saying, and there's no doubt we've had some groups that claim to be from Ahlul Sunnah, and any time an ant uttered the smallest statement, even a crumb against them, they came with 200 praises from different scholars about them. And why, even if it was 400 years ago that the Sheikh praised them, they come up with 200 different things to show, because they're scared. And this is a dangerous, sick form of hizbiyah. May Allah guide us and our brothers, because you don't want, you want good for anyone who is at least claiming and wants and loves the usul of Ahlul Sunnah, or at least claims that. You want good for them. You want good for all the Muslims. But some of the people, they fall into all of these traits of hizbiyah. They call to themselves, they praise themselves, they praise their group, they only praise their few scholars, they make ta'zeem of their scholars, even if their scholars might not be on the same level as other scholars from Ahlul Sunnah, and they put them up to the highest position, and then they destroy their own scholars if they disagree, if there's discord, and they take one blind following position. Hizbiyah, fawqa hizbiyah. It's a cake of hizbiyah with layers of hizbiyah. Wallahu musta'an. He says, lastly, know that people are honored and dignified based upon their actions. So if you are upon the sunnah, then every day you will be honored therein for that. And only but a few days will pass, except that you will eventually become an imam, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and we made from amongst them leaders, giving guidance under our command, when they were patient and used to believe in our signs with certainty. And if you are upon bid'ah, then every day you will be honored therein for that, by those who follow you. And only but a few days will pass, except that eventually you will become an imam in that realm, being in a realm of being a mubtadi'ah. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, say, whoever is in error, then the most gracious will extend the rope for him. So meaning that if you are on misguidance and bid'ah and mukhalafat, and you have that arrogance and you don't have really that desire for the truth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to allow you to continue to flourish in your bid'ah, flourish maybe with more followers and this and that and the other, until it just destroys you, until your end. And then that's what you'll come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with lots of bid'ah in his religion, having been a caller to dalal, and you were popular in the dunya. فَقَدْ قِيلْ, and it was said about you to have that. وَعِيَاذٍ بِاللَّهِ, may Allah protect us from that. He says, also Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this regard, Allah said about Fir'aun and his people, after describing them with arrogance which they had no right to exercise, and we made them leaders calling to the fire. Leaders calling to the fire. وَعِيَاذٍ بِاللَّهِ. So choose for yourself from your deeds today what will define for you what type of imam you will be tomorrow. This is what I wanted to present, and Allah knows best. May the peace and blessings of Allah be upon his slave and messenger Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, written by Sheikh Ibrahim ibn Amr al-Rahili in the Prophet's city of Medina, the year 1424, 10:8. We ask Allah Azza wa Jal, the Almighty, to bless the Sheikh, bless all of the ulama of Ahlul Sunnah wherever they may be, and all of the youth of Ahlul Sunnah wherever they may be. May Allah guide us all and protect us all, forgive us all. And even the people of misguidance, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide them. May Allah protect us from being from amongst them. And may Allah tabarak wa ta'ala bless us all with ikhlas, with the bad, and to do those things united as a ummah, based upon the book and the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the madhab of the Salaf. May Allah protect us from being a caller to the nar, and may Allah protect us from all of those evil and wicked traits that people possess, and may Allah forgive us of our own sins and shortcomings and hide our sins and our shortcomings. Wa sallallahu wasallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Thus ends our study of this short treatise of Sheikh Ibrahim. We did it in 8 sittings. May Allah reward you. May Allah make it to be beneficial for us and anyone who listens to it. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it on our scale of good deeds and not on our scale of bad deeds. May Allah tabarak wa ta'ala help us to go forward and be upon that which is good and that which pleases him. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. And before I'm going to look and see if there's any questions, but if there are any request of something to teach or to go through that's not too in depth, because I'm only going to be here probably another less than a week before I get ready to travel to my city. So then I probably won't be teaching as much, but and have to get back in the groove of things. But anyhow, if there's anything short to maybe go through or that people are interested, if not, then I will pick something and do and do the best to deliver that which is khair. طيب. Yes, when Athari Institute is up, that will not have ceased anything for the dawah that I'm trying to do at all. Athari Institute is just more focused, it's going to be more of a platform. So it's going to be more classroom oriented, kind of, it's going to be edited. It's going to have all the whistles and bells as far as being edited, as close to a classroom experience. It's going to have exams. Okay, I have to write exams for each course. It's going to have those things because it's going to be an institute. Of course, on the YouTube, I'll still be doing what I've been doing. And hopefully right now, because of where I'm at, the internet quality is very poor. So I'm not allowed, so I don't have the ability to really edit or anything. I've just been pushing out stuff, doing these live streams. When I get to Seattle, I plan on continuing doing some live streams and going through books. It's not going to cease. But Athari Institute will be another level, I hope. It will be, and it is. I have been teaching finishing books. It's about finishing books. It's about doing things for really laying a foundation. It's a program. Whereas in the YouTube, okay, I feel like teaching this. Somebody wants to teach this. We just, you just do whatever. But that is a program. I've finished level 1 now, alhamdulillah. I just need my editor to come and edit some of the last durus. Since Ramadan, alhamdulillah, I've been hitting it hard. Every day I've been recording. Yesterday, alhamdulillah, I recorded two different lessons. So that was really good. Today I've recorded one right before we started this, and I'm going to do some more since I got my coffee. And so I'm trying to get this ready so that, so then I have enough material, because since I'm doing it myself, I have to do the material. I have to do everything, make the curriculum. And I haven't still come up with exactly how I want the higher levels, but I want to do books of the Salaf more. I want to emphasize those. But the first 2 levels are really given a good introduction, and some books like, some books of Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab that are shorter books, but also some books in, a little bit in hadith, in fiqh. So I'm trying to get different sciences. In the beginning, it will not be an Arabic course. It will not have Arabic. It will not have Quran. It will have some basic tafsir. It's basically it'll have different levels. It'll have levels for people who are very, new Muslims or new to study. And then it'll have more advanced levels, especially getting to level 3 and 4. And even some of the stuff, there's going to be Qawaid Fiqhiyah, basic introduction to the fiqh principles, perhaps some basic usul of fiqh, things like this. And then once I have it to where it's done in the website and I have exams and it's up and running, I can put even more advanced courses, and hopefully I'll be able to get other students of knowledge to come in, you know, if I have the money to be able to pay them to be able to do short courses and just to continue to build on it. I want it to be a huge bank before I'm in the grave of resources, of a strong program that can last after me, and that people can benefit from, and whole different levels. You know, who knows, in the future maybe it can be a university. That would be ultimately what I'd like to do. But anyway, we're going to start step by step. Initially, it'll have probably by the time I launch it, it'll be a 4-level program. I may not have it all recorded by then, but I'll be in the process, because I've already almost finished 2 levels. Alhamdulillah. You know, and each level will have 6 books. So I finished 6 books for level 1, or 6 courses. I have almost 6 courses for level 2, and even some durus that I already did that are higher levels that I'll use for the higher level courses. So alhamdulillah, it's coming along. So we're going to get it. I can't put a time frame still, but once I get a little bit closer, then I will have a better idea of how soon I'll be able to get to the next level of actually getting my website up and stuff like this. So alhamdulillah, it's coming. I just saw something. Can you explain the stance of Ahl Sunnah on Tahakum? Did you hear Abu Sama's fatwa given today about Pan-Africanism? No, I didn't. Do you have enough knowledge to come with that conclusion? I'm not sure what's going on. Can you teach like a short refutation of the Ashari? Haven't seen a good one in English. Again, I don't like to, again, it's different people, I guess, listen to this channel. Some people are very basic, and then there are some, and new Muslims even, and then there's some people who have more advanced knowledge. So that, no doubt, is much more advanced knowledge, but I've already done it. I have more than 5,000 videos on this channel. If you type in my name, you type in one of those subjects, you'll probably find something. Some of those are extensive refutations of issues related to the Asharis. Also durus like Aqidat Wasatiyah. It's finished. It's all on the YouTube. So you can go, it's there. So I don't feel any need to necessarily repeat those kind of things. It's not as beneficial. It's already there. A lot of stuff. Let's see what's going on here. So there's a lot of comments, and the comments kind of mix with the questions. Okay, talking about yes, Condi, blah, blah, blah. What do you think about the statement alluding to you can be of every sect except the one speaking out? Well, I just dealt with that. I think we just talked about that's complete batil, that someone says you can join any group in any sect. It's all from the truth. This is the asl of Ikhwan Muslimin. That's what they say. And even Ikhwan Muslimin doesn't necessarily say that explicitly. They just accept everything and, excuse one another. So that's definitely a hardcore base principle of Ikhwan Muslimin. And it's a very evil principle. I mean, I'm looking at the perspective of what our pious predecessors, what the Sahaba, radiallahu ta'ala anhum ajma'in, and those, what they would say, because we see it in the books. We have tons of athar of how they spoke about people who had different creeds, those various sects that began to appear during their time and after. So we understand we have a plethora of books that deal with that stuff. So anyone who comes up with this newly invented bid'ah and qol shani', this wicked, smelly statement that it's something which comes from the context of our times, of being in America, having changed different manahij, thinking that you've evolved and being deceived by the shaitan, that you've elevated in knowledge to somehow you've elevated beyond the Salafi creed, the Athari creed, meaning the creed of the Sahaba. How did you elevate beyond that? That's not an elevation, that's going down. And so we see that some of the people have been deceived and they make these statements, that then it's okay to have. How could it possibly, especially the one who has said this and is alluding to these things, or actually is specifically saying these things and propagating this, how could someone like that say that when they have studied in depth the creed of some of those mubtadi'ah, dhal, that these and some of the kufriyat that some of those ideologies and some of those sects lead off to. So it's just it just shows how any of us can go astray. It's just a dangerous and scary thing. We ask Allah for ikhlas with the bat, but that is falsehood on top of falsehood. And we will detail that in the future. But right now, I'll suffice with saying that, but that requires really going in and making a comparison to that newly invented ideology, because it's an ideology. It's a whole new approach in a madhab, and it's a new paradigm that it's all good, because even those early sects, even the Asharis and the Maturidiyya, don't really accept that. You will see the contemporary people who are du'at to that minhaj, that they will, for the sake of peace in the greater community and peace in maybe in America or the UK or wherever they are, that they will kind of propagate that we're all Muslim, it's all good. But there's no way, you're not going to speak in their masjid. The Maturidi, they're not going to let you if you are Athari in your creed, or even if you are something else. And I know this personally. I see all the time. Those guys, I know a lot of Deobandi Masajid where I'm from. And like I said, we have a mutual respect and understanding. They know I've been in Saudi Arabia for many years. They would never invite me to even speak about anything, about my experience as a Muslim even. They will never, ever, even when they are reading hadith and that none of them know the explanation, and I've studied these under the beards of many scholars, not one, but many times different scholars, this same book, Riyadh al-Salihin, they would never invite me to sit there, and that could be for a few reasons. For one, we're on something totally different, so they will not accept it. And number two, unfortunately, because there is those racist overtones that we experience and we see, sometimes it's that too. They don't want to hear that. An indigenous Muslim, meaning indigenous from America, could never really achieve knowledge in their eyes. It doesn't matter. You could study for 4,000 years, but you'll never be equipped as far as some of the people in their mentality. So, alhamdulillah. So yeah, so my thing is, Ahl Bid'ah, even themselves, they don't accept that. They don't accept those statements that these people, these propagators of this stuff come out. I think this has been done so much as far as the stance of Ahl Sunnah and Tahakum, so much when a person refers to be judged by other than Sharia. I mean, there are countless translations the brothers have done. It's there. So if you want to search it, I would say research it. I don't really like to deal with those kind of issues anymore, and only if it's necessary, because it causes so much confusion for the people. And a lot of those issues are big issues. It's not like a simple, everybody knows they have to rule by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala what he revealed. Everybody who's a Muslim that isn't like totally destroyed in their outlook on life in Islam, like the modernists and the progressive Muslims, that these people, yes, because a lot of them, they don't even know that they may have even left the fold of Islam. They have a love for Islam, but it's not just your love of Islam that keeps you a Muslim. Some of the people don't even have anything to do with a creed of Islam. They believe things, things unbelievable, that either Christians and Jews, they might believe the same thing and they refuse to make takfir of them. They believe, so what can you do with somebody like that? So anyway, the point is there is so much detailed stuff like that. Those are detailed issues. Where can I find the details of how come I find most from Jahil Takfiris? But the brothers have done, even regardless of our various views of study publications, they've done immense work on this. Immense work. So don't throw that away. They've done immense work in many translations. You could go on their websites. They have so many in their whole, the Troyd Salafi publications and the other people who are aligned with them have done a lot of work. also many other Salafis have done it. Go to Salafi Minhaj out of the UK, which is the brothers in Brixton, I believe. And I benefited a lot from their translation, and they've even taught some of their stuff there. They've translated about these issues from many of the scholars. There's tons and tons of stuff out there about coming from, only take it from the scholars of Sunnah. What Imam bin Baz, Imam Al-Albani, both, and Imam bin Uthaymeen, Imam Muqbil has statements, but I don't know if all those are translated. But a lot of that stuff is in English. So if you need English, and there's just tons of stuff. There's so much. Even I have so many books on the subject. I'm overwhelmed if I want to talk about it or if I want to research. I have too many sources. So it really takes siphoning what is going to be beneficial for the specific topic that you're talking about. But anyhow, is it free mixing when giving dawah online through a phone call? I don't know if it means that you're calling to a specific sister and you're talking to her sister, this and this and this. This is not something that is a praiseworthy good trait, because it is it opens up a door. However, to say that that's not really free mixing, you're not really physically mixing, although you can be at night alone, as far as they're on the picture and you're on the on the video and stuff. So it's a dangerous thing. In Arabic, I know, anyway, I know some of the du'ats. I'm sure they have translated and they've done works on it. But what I would say is that it, it's a thing to be very cautious of. But to say that it's totally out of the, we live in mixed societies. So you're going to have to mix with Susie on so many different levels. So the best level to mix with Susie is to call her to Islam. If she comes to your house, not coming into your house, but I mean, maybe she comes to knock on your door for something. She remembers you from high school, whatever the case may be. Tell her about Islam. Don't run. Oh my gosh, I'm not here. I'm under the bed. No, but the reality is we are mixing, but don't go out of your way. Stay away from things that are gonna lead to, following the khutuwat al-shaitan, the ways of the shaitan. Stay away from those things. But you're probably going to go to Starbucks. You're not going to stay away from all the coffee houses because there's women in there. I don't think so. So the point is that, you have to observe the Islamic boundaries at all times to the best of your ability. Lower your gaze. You are going to be interacting with the opposite sex in our societies. Never mind our societies. In the world, I don't know of any place, it's small pockets where they strictly. Sardia was pretty strict before, but now that's loosened up. So it's just the reality of the world. Wherever you go, you're going to have to deal with females. You're going to have to observe your Islamic manners by not looking all up in her eyes, but trying to lower your gaze and stuff like that. Maybe your boss is a woman. Maybe relax. Your boss is a man and you're a woman. Whatever the case may be. Observe the Islamic principles to the best of your ability. And of course, dawah is the best reason to be talking to someone else. And Allah Tabaraka wa Ta'ala knows best. One person in the UK gave a dodgy fatwa saying this is halal and his dalil was ta'wil upon ta'wil. I don't know what he said that was halal. Is signing a petition for Black Lives Matter permissible? I said that myself the other day, that somebody asked about contributing to this thing. I personally don't believe in marching with people and participating in that. And also because it is, you've now brought in your platform as a Muslim with, a lot of, the foundation of a lot of those organizations is homosexuality, that they are homosexuals who want to intersect the struggle of African American peoples with that of homosexuality and other things. So my advice is not to, definitely, I don't believe in marching. I'm not going to say it's prohibited. I'm not going to say this because it's a different reality. And Sheikh bin Uthaymeen, he also, from his fiqh and his basira and his insight, was asked about this type of issue about marching or protesting in a non-Muslim society. And he gave a very beautiful detailed answer. So I will not say, oh, they are mubtadi'ah or they're wrong because they're protesting. I don't do it. I don't believe it's the best way forward. But as far as a petition, because you have a right Islamically, and I was just listening, anyway, many of the scholars, they detail about this, that you have a right Islamically to pursue your rights. So signing a petition, which is going to change the government's oppression and put pressure on the government, there's no harm in that. That has nothing to do with ruling by what Allah revealed or going against it. Because when you talk about going against the Sharia, it means going against the Sharia. It means something that contradicts the Sharia. So the Sharia says this, but you are found a new way and you say, no, I'm going to do this. It's the opposite. No. So that's not ruling by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, other than what he revealed. So asking for your rights, there's no harm in asking for your rights. And of course, if you're not going to be marching and stuff to put pressure, you do need to be writing to your congressperson. If you've been wronged in that society, you have that right. If someone is oppressing you and harming you physically, you have the right to go to the police, even if it's another Muslim, even if it's your husband and he is beating you and the community is not defending you. How could I say, no, sister, don't go to the police. Let's keep it quiet. And you just keep your face getting smashed up. No. If the brothers in that community, because some of those communities in America, anyway, I can speak on, they used to roll on people. We had many, especially back in the day, the brothers did not play. Oh, sister so-and-so's getting beat up. Bro, what's going on with that? The imam would invite him to the office. Big Abdullah was sitting there with his hand as big as his whole camera. Bow! Bust his nose right there in the thing. Right there in the imam's office. This is how they used to roll. I'm not saying that that's the best way, but what I'm saying is they had a way of dealing with those things where they didn't have to go to the police first and foremost. The people were afraid when the imam calls you to the office, you were in trouble. So there's something to be said about those old school American communities, especially in the African American communities. They didn't play. They were trying to really practice Islam. Unfortunately, in some of our communities, some of our immigrant communities, they're so weak that they allow pedophiles to go unmolested. No, you can escape back to Pakistan or India. You can go. We'll keep it quiet in the community. Let's not speak about it. No, you can't do that. You have violated every trust in the masjid, and you allow a pedophile to get away with that? And do you think some of us are going to sit by and let you do that to our children? And we're not going to roll on you and have your head? It just doesn't make sense, because brothers in America don't play that. We don't play that stuff. You mess with my babies, and then and you think that, hey, we're gonna let you slide like that. This doesn't happen. So, or it shouldn't happen. But unfortunately, so those are just some points I want to mention. May Allah forgive us and the people and guide us in them. I mean. Is one sinful if they open a credit card account to build their credit if in their country is difficult? We all know about this, and these are old things. The problem about this, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala rectify our condition and affairs. For the sake of building your credit, I wouldn't do that. Okay, again, I can't give you hukm shari, meaning I can't give you fatawa. I'm not giving anybody fatawa. That's not my job. You know, I'm not a scholar. I'm just a small student of knowledge who likes to share what I can share and what I've studied or what I come across from ulama Sunnah. As far as the credit card, we know the asl in that is that really it's not permissible, but because there is a necessity. For example, I had to rent this truck. Where I live now, where I stay, and I've always fought against that, but it became a necessity because it wasn't about building credit, but most rental car places will not rent to you. Impossible. I had to have a car because I live 3 hours and 15 minutes from the airport of where I flew into. Have to have a car. Impossible. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't be here. I have to have a car. So that is the sabil that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give me. So having a credit card out of necessity, or haja. The scholars mention haja and necessity. You know that those are different things. A necessity might be more of possibly more of a life and death thing, and the scholars detail this issue, so it needs research about defining a haja and a necessity. But anyway, they distinguish between the two. Something you need, so this would probably fall more under a need than an absolute necessity. I wasn't going to die, but I wouldn't be able to. I have to come to my land. I have to come and I couldn't just fly and just buy a car at the airport. It doesn't work that way. So it's no doubt become a necessity. For that reason, I got my first credit card that I've had in years. And, it was a necessity. So that's what I would say. As far as that, I wouldn't get, just because you want to build your credit. I mean, I think there's other ways, and I'm new back in the society. So I'm, paying your bills, I think, is one of the ways, and things like this. But I wouldn't, because it opens a dangerous door. If you get it for something which is other than a necessity and other than a haja, or other than a need, then you're entering in an agreement, for one, that says you're going to pay interest if you don't pay. And so it's not about paying the card before interest, but the asl of the agreement is batil. The asl of the agreement is batil. That's why it's something that a practicing Muslim should only look at as a necessity, something they have to basically have to function in the society. For example, insurance and many other things that we have to have. If you don't, you're going to jail. You're going to jail. They're going to just, or they will take your car. Who can afford to take, sorry, I didn't have insurance. Masalama, go give me your car. You can, your car's impounded, or whatever the law is. It's some huge fine, so it becomes a haja. It becomes a need that you need in that society. Okay. So those are the kind of issues. That's what I can say about that. May Allah bless us all with that which is good. Back then when they didn't play, that's exactly it. Is it halal to hear music in the background of a video? You should do your best to not hear the background, to not, but it's almost impossible if you're doing anything where you're doing videos, where you're watching a sewing video. Well, they're going to play music. And so do your best to avoid it. That's what you do. Do your best to avoid it. Okay. I'm not going to say, no, you can't watch documentaries. You can't educate your children with documentaries. You can't do this. You can't. No, we got to be practical and real that, maybe some people are strict and they'll have their sounds turned off. I don't know what they can do if everything is totally off like that. But I know some people that they are real strict like that, but they're usually young and kind of new to practicing and stuff like this. Or they hold certain views about everything, about videos and cameras and everything, and I don't know, How do we lower still see that which we shouldn't? What do we do if we lower our gaze? But alhamdulillah, there's no sin on you then. Because the thing is, if you lower your gaze and you're trying to practice, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, wattaqullah mastata'tum. Fear Allah as much as possible, as you can. Do your best. That's all you can do. You can't do beyond your best. Do your best. So that means you try your best to lower your gaze. And the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, that's why he mentioned the first gaze, the second gaze or what have you, being the sin, because you're going to see, today I had to travel to go shopping. Okay. I had to get some food for my remainder of my stay here. So I went. It's an hour journey, hour and 15 minutes, one way, hour 15 back. Anyhow, I went to Walmart, bought some canned foods and some organic vegetables and fruits. Of course, there was many things in there. You try to lower your gaze, bam. So you might see something, then turn away. Fear Allah as much as man. But if you're going for the third look, that's where you get in trouble. Or as some people used to joke and say, yeah, he's lowered his gaze. I got that one look. So they would follow it for about... La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. We have some iman that we all need to work on. Wallahu musta'an. Try to look at prepaid credit. I don't know if that's any different. I really don't know, but I know that some of the places, I have a debit card. That's my asl. I've had debit cards for years. And alhamdulillah, that has no riba and it's not even connected to a savings account. What you have in the bank is what you have on your card. But a lot of places, and I've had serious, actually, when we came back from Saudi Arabia, coming back, my introduction to society, I did everything online. I get to, when I arrived after a 22-hour flight with a big family, and we had to take a shuttle, just two of us, to the car rental place. Even though I had rented it and did everything, they refused. They said, sorry, you have to have a credit card. I said, well, why was it, and they ended up taking the money from me. I didn't get it back because I just didn't have time to fight for it and stuff like this. They took that money from me. On top of that, I was unable to rent, and I just happened to have someone else who came and saved the day, had big vehicles, and 2 vehicles came, took all these suitcases for migration from Saudi Arabia back to America. And it was difficult, but alhamdulillah, Allah made a way. But my point is, I was stuck without, if I didn't have family and friends in Seattle, I'd have been shot out. I'd have been in big trouble, stuck at the airport. What could we have done? It was a very difficult thing. So after that, I had to get one for the necessity. I see some other stuff here. I hope not. We try our best not to make fatwa. Again, that's why you see I have a whole thing on my YouTube about Islamic advice. I offer advice, and the advice is different because a lot of times it's not a hukm shari. They want to know my view, and I give my view based upon the guidelines of what I know in Islam and keep it pushing as a advice, but not as fatwa. Other brothers, they have more knowledge and they can do that. Is comparative religion the best way to give dawah? A brother I know spends time debating. No, it's not. It's not the best way. But again, don't destroy everything that's out there. And what I mean is by that is, for example, I used to have a harsher opinion about like Ahmadidat and stuff. I'm not going to hand out those things, his old tapes and stuff. But he fulfilled a bab. He fulfilled a compartment of knowledge that many of us don't have, nor the ability. So he fulfilled. So I would not, may Allah have mercy upon him for the good that he contributed and forgive him of his mistakes, because he excelled in his science of the comparative religion, like Zakir Naik, okay? Regardless of his issues in Aqidah and stuff, if you don't have anyone from Ahl Sunnah who's fulfilling that role, then I see no benefit in spending your time trying to destroy him and the good of what he's doing that no one else is fulfilling. And he is very good at it. Has itqan, okay? He is excellent experience and so forth. So that is not the asl of the dawah, is making that comparative religion. But we don't say, but I wouldn't write that totally off as an asloob, that, having that knowledge of the others' books. But I don't encourage people to learn that path and go on that path of knowledge, but someone does, if someone from the community has that knowledge, then this is khair. I'm not going to put a hukam on it, say it's fard al-kifaya or anything like this, but that the bottom line is this offers some khair for those who are well-grounded and well-versed in other faiths and can show the falsehood and the contradictions. But it's not the asl of how we approach dawah. What are your top 10 recommendation books for a beginner student who's gone through Metin Talib al-Ilm 1? I'm not sure what Metin Talib al-Ilm 1 is. Maybe that's some program that someone has made or something that you got. So I don't know what that is, but the scholars just mention in general, some of them mention that you should try to memorize or, at least study, if not, study a book in all the main sciences as a student of knowledge, because student knowledge is different than just the general Muslims of what they maybe should learn and try to benefit from. So there's different levels of knowledge. So I don't know what those 10 books that you're talking about exactly, whose program that is, but you can usually, a lot of times, from the, if they're, I don't know if that's 10 Aqidah books or that's a well-rounded book. So there's usually pretty well-known progression from that. For example, if you start off with Qawaid al-Arba and something, okay, move to Usul al-Thalatha or something. Or if you've studied those books, you can move on to Kitab al-Tawheed as far as some specific Tawheed related books. More complicated, complex books, advanced books to understand that you would need probably explanations of the scholars, if you go to some of the books of the Salaf regarding specifically about Tawheed, because they detailed more Tawheed al-Asma'i wa Sifat and things like this. And that was the fitna they dealt with. So it's the little yellow book by the Imam of Masjid an-Nabawi. Okay. Yeah, I don't know exactly what their program is, but that program probably is consistent with a lot of the institutes there in Saudi. So again, you can basically type that in on the net to see what their book 2 is. Look at their program. There's so many resources for those kind of questions of the scholars mentioning and just detailing it. There's tons. So, and I know a lot of it's translated in English. So that's where I would advise you to go to. What books do you print out, and can you tell us what website you print out those books? Are you talking about Arabic? I guess you're talking about Arabic books. So for me, as far as Arabic books, I go all over. What I do a lot of times, especially now, because I have a lot of printout books, and actually my printer just stopped. Must have got jammed. What happened? It jammed up, looks like. Anyhow, as far as for me, it depends on the book that I'm looking for. So for me, I might type in explanation of Aqidat al-Wasatiyya, Shar' Aqidat al-Wasatiyya, Tafriq Shar' Aqidat al-Wasatiyya. What the transcripted explanation of Aqidat al-Wasatiyya. And then it'll give you many different sheikhs. You go on Google, and there's a lot of good websites. And what you find is really in those things, I find that a lot of times, well, maybe because they are Salafi or, books of Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'ah. So that's why you're going to find scholars of Ahl Sunnah who are the ones explaining them. You're not going to find scholars of Tasawwuf or Asharis explaining those books, but some of the books you will. Of course, there's a lot of controversy with Aqidat al-Tahawiyya and stuff like this. So you will find if it is, there's tons of stuff. I go to many different websites, so I can't even begin to point you, but a lot of times I'm looking at shuruh of books that are rare books of the Salaf, and most of the time it's either well-known scholars, most of the time, or scholars that are not as known, but yet they're still, known from Ahl Sunnah. They might not be very popular out there. They, especially those rare books of the Salaf. So that's where I find a lot of different, there's so many, basically it's typing in what you're looking for, because there's just unlimited. And I just found a website, actually, don't remember the name of it. I won't use it because they have spent years doing excellent work of books that are not printed. You will not get them, but you have to pay. It's a service. So I'm not going to do it. I've got enough free books, and I have enough books of my own books, but they were some really goodies that I would love to print, but they need to be compensated because they have a team that is transcribing those books. So they need money. And I have too many free ones, and it's not, nah. Someone asked about the hukum of Pan-Africanism. Is Pan-Africanism halal? Any kind of pan movement that is not based on Islam, and if it means that you're making ta'zim of a particular nationality or race over Islam and Muslims, then of course that's not permissible. That's absolutely not permissible. And what you find a lot of times with a lot of those movements, I think, you definitely find gradations. What I mean is gradations of nationalism. For example, the Arabs, they have the pan-Arab movement is very strong. You know, it's a very, and because in a lot of the Arab lands, you have Islam, this is where you have a lot of the contradictions. So you find that a lot of those pan-Arabists book in the Sunnah and belittle the religion for the Arab cause, you know, whether it's Palestine or whether it's this or whether it's that, whether it's a country here or, you know, hey, let's march for Syria or whatever the case may be. So you find that a lot of times they are more extreme in that they have established extreme movements like, you know, because they have a connection with Islam, but then they violate it. Whereas a lot of Pan-African movements are aslan not even Muslim movements anyway. You know, there may be Muslims that are influenced by the ideology, but you don't see what you see, for example, with the Arab nationalism, especially. For example, you had Saddam Hussein, you have in Syria, Bashar, that they are Hizb Ba'ath. And that's Hizb Ba'ath, Arabiya, blah, 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 blah. And so what you see, unfortunately, these pan movements, anyhow, they're not permissible, and that they subvert Islamic principles. And sometimes they're just playing, you know, as Bin Baz and others referred to those guys, make takfir of them for their involvement because they took those principles. There were some core principles that they ruled by and judged by over Islam. And that totally contradicted. It wasn't just a matter of, okay, this is wrong and this is sinful, but there were some things of just pure kufr, you know, with the Hizb Ba'ath, like what Bashar has, as well as his political base platform and movement. And so there's different levels. And what we just live in a time of nationalism. So this is not new. The Pan-African movement is really actually fairly, I don't know if it's weak, because you had it kind of, it began with non-Muslims like Kwame Nkrumah from Ghana and things like this, without getting into all the history. But anyhow, so I think that answers your question. But the point is, because we're born in this time, we all are probably influenced to a greater or lesser extent from these ideologies and even racism. Okay, there's no way you can say you're not affected by racism, even if you think you're not. Mostly, especially in Western societies, you know, every society has their own way and their own kind of racism and so forth. Whereas in America specifically, especially the African American experience, or especially African American, and then and the native indigenous peoples, they had a specific, you know, it was a very violent history. So lynching, you know, there are many, like even the Nation of Islam, what's his name, Elijah Muhammad, he witnessed like 4 of his brothers get killed. So what do you expect? Do you not expect that probably would be the reaction, is that he became pretty black nationalism and had a great and built his ideology based on hatred for whites, because what he saw in his reality was that whites were what he referred to as devils, and that they killed and hung. I mean, his brothers, I can imagine that. So there's no way that all of us have not been influenced and affected by racism and nationalism. I recall, for example, because this is a hot topic, now I might as well talk about it a little bit. When I was in Medina, I remember talking to one of my colleagues. He was from Pakistan. They're working in Medina, and we were all in this night program at Jamiat Islamiyah. It was through Jamiat Islamiyah, and we're studying the Arabic language and other Tawheed and things like this. And he was very good, mashallah. His Arabic and stuff, he was very strong, and he, you know, his Quran, he was very strong. I remember him. I remember his name. Anyhow, he wasn't, you know, Salafi or anything like this, but he was a good, you know, good brother, you know, practicing. And alhamdulillah, he came to there for the Talib al-Ilm. And I remember I mentioned about Jannah, what's his name? The founder of Pakistan. I can't think of his name now, but I studied that history. I studied the history of India and those things. Anyhow, and I mentioned him in a negative light. Boy, did that come out of him, my man. My man was, boom, he wasn't having it. So you could see how influenced, how emotional, how powerful that was for him, the Pakistani state. So much so, because I said, hey, that guy had some serious issues, and Aqidah was the issues. You know, regardless, whatever, okay. But Pakistani founding father, but he had some issues, dangerous issues in Aqidah. What are you saying? I mean, he just went crazy because of the nationalism. So we are born in this time. Prior to nationalism, which nationalism isn't that old as the ideology, probably more than, 100 and something years or something like this, perhaps, or 200 years maybe, that, people didn't have these national identities. A lot of places that we call countries now weren't even countries. It's just open lands of peoples, tribes, and different peoples who had their own identities and stuff. So, to make a long story short, we're all influenced, unfortunately, to a greater or lesser extent. And I think with a lot of those things, it's how you deal with it. Are you trying to put your Islam first to deal with the non-Islamic ideologies, or are you allowing those ideologies to rule you over your Islam? And this is what's very dangerous. So we are products of those things, and we are all influenced to a greater or lesser extent. I can't see some issues of race in the world because I come from America, which is a very race conscious, and depending on where you're from in America is going to determine a lot of your experience and how you think on the world, So all those things are, and that's what I try to view, even when we see the emotionalism of what's going on here, and in this powerful times of great change or great push for change. And we're seeing a lot of things. A lot of people are displeased with what they're hearing from certain du'at and things like this. But I think you can't put things out of context, and you have to look at things in a bigger picture. Not saying when someone is wrong, they're wrong. When someone is right, they're right. But I think it's very important to also have a good, to look at things from the broader perspective, to empathize. I empathize even when I see Palestinians with all their national fervor, and then they, for them, it's about Palestine. It's not about Masjid al-Aqsa. It's not about the deen. They could be grave worshippers. They could be Christian Palestinians. They unite upon that mostly. It's they want their state. They could be totally non-practicing. Those are, so you can't take it out of context that they haven't been oppressed people and stuff. Doesn't mean we support their cause. We support Islam. But to empathize who these people are and understand, I think that's very important. It's very important to understand and not insult people for the history of people, because it is what it is, And the Arabs had this too during the time of the Prophet ﷺ. It's not like they forgot their tribes and they forgot everything. They said, I'm Muslim, I forgot everything. It's just they gave Islam the precedence. They didn't forget they were Quraysh. They didn't forget the Prophet ﷺ spent time calling his people. Even the mushrik, and his family, he wept at their death. Okay, he sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So it shows us we're human. We have our environments. We don't come out of space or out of a pocket or a void. These things are really real issues, and so they really take looking at them and giving at least a good, healthy look on these things. I think that's very important. So anyway, I think that's, so may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us the class with the bat. Wa sallallahu wa sallam ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. It is hard, this last question, avoiding interest and stuff like this. Again, that takes looking at the issue. Is it impossible for you to rent without a credit card? I don't know. Or, a credit history. I know that's very difficult. So that takes darasa. It takes looking at that, of getting what, if it becomes a necessity or not, if it becomes a darura or not. And then, even as the scholars mentioned, when it comes to durura and stuff like this. For example, if you had to eat pork, pork is clearly haram. Every Muslim that had the ma'lum deen bi durura. Every Muslim knows this. Even non-Muslims generally know this. And that if you had to eat pork, well, that doesn't, and you were dying and there was only pork there, okay? We know it's permissible then to eat the pork. But that doesn't mean indulging in, going beyond the bounds. Well, heck, the pork's here. I need to get full. I need to think about tomorrow. Let me just keep eating. And there's some wine too. Let me wash it down. No, it's about taking what is enough to sustain you. So that's the point. So the same thing which applies, inshallah ta'ala, if you had to do that out of necessity, you had to take that credit card or whatever to rent an apartment, otherwise you'd be homeless. Then that would be maybe a darura, an absolute necessity or a haja, and you would only do that which is necessary for that. You wouldn't overindulge and say, well, yeah, I need to establish my credit, time for a new truck, time for this, let me just keep buying because I'm establishing my credit. No. And that's the danger, because then something could happen, and then where you actually get caught up into actually having to pay riba. Aside from entering the agreement, then the next thing you know, you actually have to pay it. So that's why if it becomes a necessity, you want to take only enough to fulfill that necessity or that need. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.